What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic.
I'm Jammin,
and we have an album review for you. Yet another one that came out, which I'm not surprised by, but I am surprised by just generally because of the workload of this one individual that is associated with this band. We are going to go over the latest offering from Paganizer, Flesh Requiem. This also comes out on the 1st of November on Transcending Obscurity Records. This band formed in Sweden in 1998. This is their 13th album overall, and believe it or not, this is their third release this year. They also put out an EP and a live album, but heavy workloads and just inundating the world with lots and lots of death metal is kind of the thing with this band, or namely the main guy associated with this band we've definitely gone over before, Rogga Johansson. To say this man has a lot of bands is an understatement. I think he's at 40 plus. He forms bands quicker than Tin Limbasis ruins them. I know, I'm still on that. We've been over, a couple of his bands, at least in this channel, Revolting, Rib Spreader. Actually, we went over Rib Spreader last year. And, I mean, again, if you just look at his archives profile and just see the sheer number of bands that he is currently in, there's a ton that are just X-bands, too. I swear I could make up a band name on there, start a profile, and within a week, go back and check that profile on the archives, and somehow Rogga would be in my band.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist.
Yeah, I don't get it at all. How does this man have time to do anything? Like, eat? No. See my family? No, I don't even know what they look like anymore. Like, I don't know if I've listened to much Paganizer, but I've listened to at least, 25 Rogga bands.
And I mean, all right, the bands that he's in are pretty similar. Like, if you listen to Paganizer, there's a good chance it'll also sound kind of like the stuff that he does in Revolting or Rib Spreader or kind of any of the other bands. He kind of has one gear. He is Swedish old school death metal, tried and true. I mean, everything that he plays is very latched to a very particular, very 90s style of death metal. And to his credit, he does it pretty well. Like, there's some Revolting albums I absolutely love. There's some Paganizer albums I absolutely love. I'm not going through all of his damn bands. I know I have a ton of stuff that he's on in my collection. And there's probably stuff in my collection that I don't know he's on if I just went and looked. Like, oh, wow, he's on that. Why am I not surprised? So in a way, I was kind of looking forward to going over this because I know what this man does. And I like old school death metal. I like Swedish death metal. And he kind of covers a lot of bases within Swedish death metal. You get, of course, that straight up more HM2 Stockholm sound, Entomb, Dismember, Grave, etc. You also get elements of melodic death metal like Hypocrisy, Early In Flames, At the Gates, and stuff like that. There's more groovy meat and potato stuff on here, like Amon Amarth. And he's just kind of all about riffs. Riffs, grooves, blast beats, and once again, he has put out another album that is 100% about that.
Right. All the things I thought he was going to put in the record are 100% in the record.
And, well, I mean, all right, I'll be honest, this album is, all of them are kind of straightforward, but this album, I feel as though is a little bit more stripped down than previous efforts. Like, I really liked the last Paganizer album. Like, that one had some good grit to it, some solid riffs, duh. But also, the production felt, pretty gnarly sounding. Like, he had a good, crisp, HM2, buzzsaw tone. Like, the whole Stockholm sound, lots of D beats and, down-picked crust riffs mixed in. But also still, some flares of melody. All that is on here, but I don't feel as though these songs have as much impact. In fact, the first two songs on here, Life of Decay and Meat Factory, he's got a thing with meat on this one because there's also the song Hunger for Meat, which I suppose if you're taking a tour through the meat factory, you might get the hunger for meat.
Meat is good for you.
Yeah. Unless you're Earth Crisis, then you hate it.
Right.
But the first two songs in here kind of just execute the same thing. Like, man, if you hate tremolo riffs and blast beats on top of tremolo riffs, then you kind of probably don't like a lot of death metal. But this especially, it repeats those tropes a lot. You have, melodic tremolos, they're kind of harmonized. You'll get groovier breakdown sections, fast thrashy gallops, and honestly, that can cover most of this album.
And the first two songs were so incredibly similar, I thought the melody and or the harmony were actually the same. And it took the same course. D beat, blast beat, D beat, done. And that was pretty much all there was to it. But the sad part is that, again, a majority of this record has not only that setup, but almost the same kind of sounding riffs.
I mean, baseline, I would say that, this band and, probably a bunch of other ones that Rogga's in, they were kind of comparable to that, like, very meat and potatoes aesthetic that you hear in bands like Obituary, Jungle Rot, and probably some other bands that I can't think of that Rogga's not in yet. But, it's a very straightforward approach. You find a riff, you lock onto it, you occasionally harmonize it. You kind of just stick to the whole meat and potatoes thing. And I love Obituary. I'm a diehard Obituary fan. And I'm a big fan of Jungle Rot, too.
Yeah.
But you can tell when either one of those bands is kind of like a little bit off. Like the songs don't hit as hard. Like, yeah, it's got the groove, it's got the riffs, but they just don't have the impact. And that was kind of my issue on here, where I feel like this is just a collection of songs. And I don't feel as though they were fully fleshed out. Like, some of these feel like, they're still in kind of like the demo stage. Like, they're almost still like, in their infancy. They're kind of crawling around. They haven't kind of found like the refined hooks or like something in them to really kind of make them stand out.
And two songs that are a prime example of that are Fare the Well, Burn in Hell, and Necromonolithic. Both of those songs, while they are packed with things like decent riffs and gross tremolos, but you can say that about all these songs, really. The one thing I found in these two songs are the fact that the drums seemed a little bit off. Like, the transitions, I don't think, hit on the right beat, and the fills really don't match up with the riffs. Like in Necromonolithic, the third drum fill most specifically is 100% off.
Yeah, that particular transition really felt off. It comes in with like an isolated riff, and then you get, drum accents behind it, and the first two sound fine, and then that third one, I just feel like it wasn't a clean transition, and then it just kind of goes in the groove. So yeah, not only are the songs kind of bland for the most part, they don't necessarily feel very tight at times. You can kind of spot areas where, like, yeah, I think like they could have like hammered that out just like a little bit better. And when it comes down to dynamics, which even like meat and potatoes bands, like, they know how to break it up.
Yeah.
Like, again, I love Obituary, and, there's a lot of similar stuff in there, but they know how to break it up on an album, like to the point where the pace kind of breaks up. Like, oh yeah, we got a faster number here. This has got some good thrash riffs. Oh man, big Celtic Frost D beats and shit. Just kind of break it up a little bit. This one really does hold the course. In fact, it doesn't really change up much in terms of like the pace of the album until you get down to World Scythe, which is like more of like a Amon Amarth style Melodeath kind of sound. Like, I don't know, it sounds like Amon Amarth kind of trying to cover, I don't know, Bolt Thrower. Like, it's got the mid-tempo groove. It kind of breaks out the blast beats a bit. It's a little bit more anthemic instead of going for just like, kind of like flat out old school brutality. There's the first real solo that shows up, which is a nice melodic touch. But the song's got a couple of issues. One of them is the odd atmospheric touches, which there's not like a tremendous amount of atmosphere in here. Like the opening track, Life of Decay, has like a kind of a swell of atmosphere, and then it's off to the races and tremolos and blasts and everything else that shows up on here. But this song sets up the mood with what I initially thought was just a storm. Like all right, that's like damp noises. There's rain, there's thunder. Wait, no, those are maybe gunshots. No, those are a lot of gunshots. Those are bombs. But it's like very muffled to the point where it's kind of indistinct. Like, I don't know if it's a storm. I don't know if it's a war in a storm. To me, it sounds like someone left a window open in the house and it's storming outside, but they recorded it from like down the hallway and the door to that room is shut. So it's a very muffled noise. And the atmosphere just doesn't seem to like really gel with the song at all.
Because it doesn't really do anything. And then you get the end of the song, which I thought this song was decent until it got to the end. It's got this really weird slowdown. It just pretty much comes out of nowhere, like a stop on a dime, and now we're going to slow everything down. And it slows to a crawl, and then there's more gunshots in the rain.
Or thunder.
Or thunder. We're not 100%, but like, why is that there? Like, that killed the momentum of the song.
It's like the song just got tuckered out and was like, oh, you know what? It's time to just take a nap here. I'm just tuckered out. Which is something that I kept thinking about while listening to this. Granted, the sheer volume of stuff that Rogga puts out that he's involved in, I kind of was wondering when we get to a point where you can like just really tell that he sounds exhausted. The last Rip Spreader album I thought was pretty solid. Like it still sounded energetic. It had like solid riffs. You know, there was, you know, like some fire to it. This one, I don't feel a lot of energy. Like there's only a couple of songs in here where they really kind of like jumped out a bit. Viking Supremacy and Just Another Doomsday. Just Another Doomsday is heavy, bludgeoning, lots of machine gun riffs in there, stomping rhythms. It's a mean-spirited, just sort of like mosh anthem. I dig it. And Viking Supremacy, which at that point was the first time Vikings came up, and actually the only time Vikings came up. The themes on here are odd. They kind of jump around from death, destruction to meat.
Once again, meat is good for you.
Meat is good for you. Vikings. And we even talk about volcanoes a little bit on the Pyroclastic Excursions. So he wrote a death metal song about checking out a volcanic field or something. I don't know. But either way, Viking Supremacy is an energetic, you know, riffy monster of a song. There's some like flat out brutal moments in there. Solid grooves, good melodies. Like it's legit like hooky, and it feels like a completed, fleshed out song, you know, with attention to some detail, some unique hooks in it, and all that packed into a pretty short song, honestly.
I mean, all the songs are pretty short. There's nothing that clocks in over 4 minutes and 10 seconds, which is kind of odd, which is another reason why I feel these songs may not have been fleshed out all the way. Especially the song Hunger for Meat, which is, again, a pretty decent song, but it ends just out of nowhere.
And I get the idea behind, like, you know, a more meat and potatoes approach. You want to trim the fat. You want to kind of get it down to its most, you know, refined elements and kind of drive, like, some riffs home, some good melodies, or maybe, like, a repeated chorus refrain with, like, an anthemic fist-pumping sort of vibe. But I feel like on here, they trimmed meat off with the fat. Like, there's just, like, kind of a stripped-down approach to this to where the songs feel really bare bones. And that even goes for the ones that I think are actually pretty decent too. Like I still felt that there should be like maybe a little bit more. And with the production being kind of sterile, like it's crisp, but it's, you know, compressed and just kind of flat. The songs just don't seem to get like room to breathe. And with this frequent repetitive nature on here in terms of like kind of just like checking off all the boxes and going through the motions, you can hear moments where they could step outside of that and, you know, write a song that's like got a little bit more of an identity to it that kind of separates it from the bunch a bit, like Suffer Again. Suffer Again, it's probably the first one I heard like some flat out more doom-laden harmonies. Comes in groovy, it's got, you know, a sinister vibe, but it's different. Like it's more brooding. And then it just takes a hard right turn right into Tremoloville and starts blasting, and it's like, yeah, we've already heard this.
Yep, kind of doomy. Just kidding. Blasting D-beats, in case you were missing those. And that's the sad part, is a lot of these songs do that. Even the title track, Flesh Requiem, starts off darker and a bit more sinister, and I got all excited there too, and then, nope, off to the races. And it transitions out of these parts so soon, it's like purposely fucking with you.
That one did have like some cool moments towards the end where you get some higher screams from Rogga, which, I mean, I think his vocals are awesome.
Yeah.
Like, he's just got a great death metal roar. But showcasing some of those higher screams kind of, again, like, opened up the song. Like, it reminded me a little bit of, like, Hypocrisy. Like kind of a Peter Tagdren-style scream. But again, it's only in moments. The rest of this is, you know, kind of a rinse and repeat formula. And I get it that, you know, this band kind of works with, like, a limited palette. But at the same time, I've heard other bands work with limited palettes that do a little bit more. Now, I will say that these songs are kind of catchy in their own right, but do you really need to listen to all of them to kind of get like the full effects? Not really. Like I feel like this could have been broken up into like several EPs. And again, when it comes down to like the timetable for this, like how does he like divide time between this band and then all the other bands? Like, is there like a hurried nature about this? Like, we have to get in the studio and record these real quick. Like, how much time has he had to like practice all of these? Were these just songs that were stockpiled, maybe even for like a different project? I don't know. Like, I figure these questions have to be asked with a gentleman that puts out stuff at this volume. Like, this is like kind of a crazy thing to actually think about. this man is in over 40 bands. But that's Rogga. Rogga is a machine. I don't know if he's human. Like, this just doesn't seem possible to me to be in that many bands and literally put out music all the fucking time. But here we are going over another one of his projects. And honestly, I don't feel very strongly about this one, which is strange because I like Paganizer. Like, Paganizer's earlier stuff I think is really solid. Hell, the last album I thought was really good. This just really feels flat. So I'm going to go ahead and give this one 2 stars. This album is just kind of dull. Like, for as heavy as it is, it has like really no energy. Like, I feel like I just went over like the Cliff Notes version of like, most of Dismember's back catalog and Bloodbaths and Graves, and etc. And this was like the most, like kind of distilled down version, but they didn't get any of like the heart on here. And I've heard Rogga do like awesome stuff. Like, again, that last Rib Spreader I thought was pretty solid, but this just feels flat. Like, yeah, it's got riffs, it's got melodies. They all feel really basic, and it feels like stuff that he could have thrown together in a weekend, honestly. Still, I know this band has its fans, and I mean, if you're a fan of old school death metal and done in like a fiercely meat potatoes, no frills, no bullshit fashion, check this out. I mean, if you like Dismember, Entombed, Obituary, Jungle Rot, stuff like that, give it a whirl. Who knows, you might like it more than me, but yeah, this one really didn't do it.
I agree with Nick. It's also 2 for me. It seemed so lackluster. Like, I still can give it, a couple stars. It had low tremolos, which make me moist. I wouldn't kick this record out of bed, but I wouldn't wait a whole long time to call it an Uber either. It sounds like 1,000 other things that sound like this that came out in the 90s. It's got decent riffs, but I ask this question, in a world full of competing meat and potatoes HM2 bands, how far can you really go? And especially when you're in 40 other bands, like, that's one of my questions is, eventually, are you going to run into things and like, oh crap, this song was meant to be for another band, oh well, fuck it, it's already on the album? Like, I feel like it had that kind of vibe to it.
I feel like there's a world record he's chasing, or at least he's increasing his odds of being like the master of the HM2 death metal bands, because he has so many.
I mean, this record was solid. It had decent riffs. The tremolos were nasty. It had catchy moments, but other than that, it was just kind of there. And the fact that it ran into itself a bunch, and the fact that it had just so many similar tropes from track to track, just made it kind of like. But that's where we're at. Much like we said, if you like basic, solid, no frills death metal that's still riffy and headbangable, you're probably gonna like this. Of course, Entombed and Dismember and Amon Amarth and all that kind of jazz. I don't know, check it out for yourself. It just didn't really hit the nail on the head for me.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also now have memberships. They are only 99 cents, and we will start doing our members-only live stream sometime this month.
Yep.
But that is our one and only perk. We also have a booger troll. But guess what? There's another booger troll, because I put it in there today.
Oh, sweet.
I also put in a couple other emojis, so I actually did something.
Oh, now I gotta look.
Anyway, this is our latest way to support the channel if you would like. It is pretty much to help us out with StreamYard raising their prices and eventually getting us away from Patreon. All you got to do is click the join button down below if you are interested. We also still have our store, shirts and hats and all that stuff. That is at thrallsmetal.com, which is linked down below as well.
Just to remind you guys, 2 booger trolls. Huh? But seriously, no. We do all this stuff for you guys. Album reviews, discography rankings, tons and tons of metal shit all the time at Thralls of Metal. All for our subscribers. I am so happy you guys are all here. We're almost at 20,000 subscribers, you guys. That's absolutely mind-blowing. I say that number out loud, and I can't fathom that. But we appreciate you guys being here. Again, thank you for all you do. Thank you for being a part of this. We appreciate you.
Yeah, you guys absolutely rule, and I am working on putting together a giveaway for 20,000 subscribers, because that's quite the landmark number, and we wouldn't be there if it wasn't for you, because that's how subscriber counts work, duh. But also because you guys are absolutely awesome, and it's just amazing doing this. So one more big thank you because of all your awesomenesses, and we will catch you later.